What's happening, guys, and welcome to episode 3 of our Java for Beginners course. In this video we're going to be exploring variables, expressions, and we're going to have an introduction to what data types are in Java. So what we're going to cover in this tutorial. So we're going to first cover what a variable actually is. In our last video we wrote our first ever Java program, but to do something a bit more useful we need the help of variables. We're also going to learn what a data type is, as well as create our own variable. We're also going to learn what an expression is in Java, and this is just going to be an introduction to expressions, as it's quite a big topic. At the end of the video we're going to go through a challenge and I'm going to give you my solution to it, and this way we can practice kind of what we've learned. So what is a variable? Well, a variable is nothing but storing information in a container. So let's have a look at a real life example. Let's say we've got a storage box. So here we go, we've got a basic box over here, and when we create a variable we need to give it a type. So let's say this box can only hold bottles, so let's say the type of this box will be bottles, or bottle, as this box can store bottles. So here we go, we've got a box of type bottle, right? And let's say we want to put this blue bottle inside this box. So this is just a storage container and we want to store this blue bottle. So let's put this blue bottle inside this box. Now we can give this box a name. So let's just call it blue bottle just for simplicity. So what we've got here is we've got a box of type bottle. So we're saying that only bottles are allowed inside this specific box. And we've called it blue bottle. And we've literally put a blue bottle in it. This is essentially what a variable is. And we can have many versions of this. We could have another box of type bottle and put a red bottle in it, and we'd call it red bottle. And anytime we need to reference that specific blue bottle, well, we can use the name of the container. So we've called this container blue bottle. And exactly in the same way, we can create a variable in Java. So what is a type? As you kind of saw before, where we said that the box was of type bottle, it's essentially we are telling Java what kind of variable we are storing. So for example, if we were storing someone's age, we'd probably need to say that to tell Java that we're storing a number, or specifically an integer, as it's a whole number. So that's all it is in Java we have some information and we give a type to match what it is. And we give the variable the name, and the computer does the hard work for us and stores it on its memory. That's essentially what a variable is. It's just some storage that's stored on the computer's memory, and whenever we need to access that piece of storage, we just reference the name that we gave it. And that's exactly what a variable is and what a type is. And there are many data types available for us to use in Java, and some of them are quite special and they're called primitive types. Now we're going to cover primitive types in the next video, but we're going to explore one of them, and that's just one that I've mentioned earlier, which is the integer, simply just a whole number. So I'm sure you've heard me ramble on enough about what a variable is, but let's actually do some coding and let's create our first variable. So as mentioned before, we need to give it a type. So what I've got here color coded for you is an example of how to create a variable in Java. So first we've got to specify what type of variable it is, which is the data type section over there. And then we've got to give our variable a unique name. And this is how we'll reference it later on in the code, such as if we wanted to print out the value of the variable, we need to know what the variable is called. And then we've got to initialize it. Now this is optional, but usually this is what you would do in programming. So to initialize your variable, which just means to give it a starting value basically, we're going to add an equal sign and give the value, or what we actually want to store. And then we end it with a semicolon. And now this is something you must have seen in the previous video where we've printed out a statement and we ended it with a semicolon. So simply that's just how we would do it. So if we were storing information about someone's age, the data type would be an integer or a whole number. The unique name would be someone's age, for example, or person's age, and then we're going to equal it to their age. And there we go. We've created our first variable, kind of theoretically, but let's actually go into the code and create one together. So let's start off by creating a brand new project in IntelliJ. So let's hit new project, and I'm going to select add sample code, because I want it to just start with kind of like a basic kind of code like the print statements. And let's call our project variable example, just like that. And this will just give us the package or the folder variable example, which will store all our code. And I'm just going to click create. And there we have it. We have created a brand new project called variable example, and there inside the source folder you'll find our main class. Okay, and there's our main method with a simple print statement that says hello world. So if we were to run this, as you might remember from the last time, we've simply printed hello world. So let's create our first variable, okay? Because we want to do something a little bit more useful than printing a message out. So I'm going to leave that there just for reference. But when we create a variable, we need to give it a data type. So if you remember, a data type is simply just a kind of like an indicator to our computer or to Java what kind of variable we're storing. So let's say, for example, we were trying to store someone's age, which I've mentioned before. So let's use the Queen's age, for example. So let's store the Queen's age in a variable. So let's give it a type. So age, let's store that in an integer. And the simplest way to do that in Java is by typing int, just like this. And you notice here, it's colored in orange, just like these words over here. So as you can guess, int is also a keyword in Java. So we cannot use int anywhere else. It has to be used only for this purpose. And the next step after we've defined the type is we have to give this a name. Now, naming variables is really important. You get it right and you kind of write it in a way that explains exactly what you're storing. So for example, we want to store the Queen's age. So it just makes sense. We call this variable Queen's age or something along those lines. Maybe age of the Queen. It's a bit wordy, but maybe we can just keep it as Queen's age just for now. Queen's age. And then to initialize it, so basically we want to give this a starting value, we just simply use the equal sign, and then now we can assign Queen's age a value. So for those that know, at the time of this recording, of course, this the Queen's age is 96. And just like the statement above, we've got to end it in a semicolon. And IntelliJ there was trying to tell us that exact same thing, as you can see here. So let's stick a semicolon at the end. And there we go, we've created our first variable. And we're basically saying that 96 is an integer because 96 is a whole number and it's stored inside a box called Queen's age, if you remember the analogy we used earlier. So now anytime we want to reference 96, we just have to mention Queen's age. So if we ran this application right now, oh dear, nothing's happened. Notice how it still says hello world. Now the reason why nothing's happened is we've not actually programmed our application to print out the value of this. So the same way above here we printed hello world, we want to now print the value of Queen's age. And the simplest way of doing that is what I mentioned earlier about just simply mentioning the name of the variable, using the name of the variable that we've created. So let's do another print statement. So if you remember, sout is a nice shortcut to use. And in here, let's type in, so first of all, the way we would be used to doing it is by simply doing this, right? And let's press play. And there you go, we've printed out 96. But what this is, if you remember from the last video, is a string literal. So what we're saying is literally whatever's inside these double quotes here, print it out. So if we got rid of that, notice that this still kind of works. So if we print that, it still prints out 96, right? But what if I change the Queen age now to 93 and press run? Notice that it's printing whatever we've specified here, right? We want to print out our Queen's age value. And simply, all we have to do is type in here Queen's age. Just like that. And now if we press the play button, we've printed out the value 96. And that's because whenever we mention Queen's age, we are pointing to this variable here, which has the value 96, right? So now whenever we change this, as you know by the term variable, it can change. So let's give it 90, and if we press the play button, notice here it's printed out 90. So that's how you create a variable and how you use a variable. Okay, it's as simple as that. Simple as creating the type, giving it a unique name, and then assigning it an initial starting value. If we did that in this way, see what happens here. We've added our double quotes around it. As mentioned before, it will literally print out whatever's between these quotes. So we need to make sure that we leave it without the double quotes, because we don't want to print out a string, which is what this is here, a string of characters. We want to print out whatever's inside this box, which is the number 96. And we can even assign expressions to a variable. So we want to go through what an expression is before we actually look into them. And an expression is essentially just some kind of computation or operation performed directly, and you can kind of perform it directly on the variable. So let's say we wanted to see what was the Queen's age 10 years ago, right? Let's create a new variable. So what type would we be storing? Well, at the end of the day, it's still going to be a number, and it's still going to be an age, so we can reuse int, okay? And let's give this a name. So let's do Queen's age 10 years ago. See, so this quite makes sense exactly what this container is storing. For example, here, if we just change this to number, whoever's using this bit of code over here is not really going to know what you're referencing. What do you mean by number? Like, what kind of number is this? And notice here, we've actually got an error. So IntelliJ is saying, cannot resolve symbol Queen's age. The reason why is Queen's age no longer exists. It can't print anything out if it doesn't know what it is. So now this would need to change to number. Okay, simple as that. And if you noticed over there, if we change that back to Queen's age, notice how number here is grayed out, just like Queen's age 10 years ago is. Well, if you hover over that, it's letting you know that we've never used this variable. So we've created number, but we've not used it. This is just another thing that IntelliJ provides, so it helps us when we're programming. Maybe we've created a variable that we never intended to use. In that case, we can just delete it. Okay, so that's just a little bit about IntelliJ and how it can help us. But let's go back to this. So we've got int Queen's age 10 years ago, and we can do equals. Now, you could just write 86, right? That's valid. That would absolutely work. Let's change that variable back to Queen's age, by the way. That would absolutely work, and we could print that out. Queen's age 10 years ago, and if we run that, we get 86. But what an operation is, or what an expression is doing a little bit more than just that. What we can do is we can reference the Queen's age of 96 just like this. I'll tell you what, let's do it without referencing the variable. So what you can do, very simply, is 96 minus 10. Literally basic maths. And if we run that now, you'll see that we still get 86. This is just what an expression is. It's just a little bit of code that computes something or does something. And what I was doing earlier is, have we got a better way to reference the Queen's age? Yes. We've actually got a whole variable here which stores the number 96 inside Queen's age. So we can replace any time we need 96 with Queen's age. I mean, anytime we would need the Queen's age. Maybe something else is 96 in a separate variable that's not related. In that case, we'd want to use that. But for this instance, where we're saying Queen's age 10 years ago, we'd probably need the Queen's age, right? So then we can minus 10 to it. And now if you run that, 86. So that's exactly what an expression is. And you can do all sorts of things. So let's create a new variable. Let's delete what we've done here. And let's do int number 1. Okay, and we'll just give this number 100. Okay, and let's do number 2 equals 50. Oh, and this leads me on perfectly to one of the other things about naming conventions with variables. You cannot have a space in your name. Okay? It has to be kind of one word, and that's why you've noticed we do something called camel casing, where the first number is always starts with a lowercase letter. So sorry, first word starts with a lowercase letter. The second word usually will have a uppercase letter to start with to let you know it's a new word. So number 2, just like that, where we uppercase a T. And then, you could have a really long thing such as, this is a number that I like. Probably not great to have a variable that long, name for a variable that long, but you kind of get the gist how every new word we start with a capital. Okay, let's undo that. So let's leave it as this. In fact, it's always good practice to use actual words for numbers. The code looks a lot cleaner like this way. So you can see here we've got number 1 is 100 and number 2. And what we can do is int total. So we're creating a new variable called total. We can actually do number 1 plus number 2, just like that. And if we printed out total right now, you'll see total is 150. So you can do a combination of anything. So even right now we can do plus number 1 again, and maybe minus number 2, just like that. And if we run that, you can see that this is completely valid. Now we've got 200. Okay, so you can have as many combinations, and you can even use brackets. So you can do this inside a bracket, and then maybe we can do times. So to do a times, we use asterisk, and then if we press run here, it's going to add number 1 and 2 first, and it's going to times it by 50, just like that. So number 1 add number 2 is 150, times that by 50, we get 7,500. I think that seems right to me. And to do a divide operation, we simply just do a slash, just like that. Just space it out to give it a little bit more readability. So now if you run that, that would work as well. Now we've got 3 because we did 150 divided by 3. So 150 divided by 50. Cool. So that's what an expression is, and what we've just looked at here are operators. This and this here is an operator in Java. Operators we'll probably cover properly in a separate video, but this is just kind of an introduction to what expressions are, which is just simply doing some form of computation, and we can do it directly on the variable right here. So let's do a quick challenge to see if we can remember what we've learned and put it to practice. So here's the challenge. What we're going to ask you to do is I want you to create a variable of type integer to represent your age and give it a good variable name. Now I want you to initialize this variable with a value which would be your age, and then after that create another variable which will represent your age in 5 years, and simply print this value out and make sure it equals your age in 5 years time. Okay, try your hardest not to look at the previous code we've done and try to do this from memory, and I recommend you pausing the video at this point and giving it a go, and I'm going to go through this challenge straight after. But yeah, give it your best shot. Don't worry if you have some challenges with it. We'll go through the solution after, and then maybe try it again until you can kind of get it working yourself. This is a great way to learn programming. It's just practice with some cool challenges. Okay, so pause this video now and give that a go, and I'm going to go through the solution in just a second. Okay, welcome back. If you've done it, that's fantastic. If you haven't done it, or if you're interested in seeing my solution, let's give it a go. So let's go back to our project over here, and let's delete what we've done in here so far. Right, so the first step says create a variable of type integer to represent your age and give it a good variable name. Okay, so to create a variable, we need to give it the type, and it's told me that I need to do the type integer. So let's do int, just like that. And it says to give it a good variable name. Well, since we're representing my age, I will simply write my age, just like that. If it was specific and it wanted names, always use names if you'd like. But if it's just my age, I think a good variable name for this would be my age. Or perhaps better, Java Bros age, just like that. maybe we can get rid of the S as well. Java bro age, just like that. And it says initialize it with your age. So let's stick 25 in that and end it with a semicolon. Okay, so there we go. We created a variable and it stored my age. Now it says create another variable which will represent your age in 5 years. Okay, so let's see. We're going to create another variable. Notice here it did not tell you what type to do, because we can only store, well, here we're working with an integer, right? And we want to know what the age will be in 5 years. So we need to make it the same type, so int, just like that. And let's give it a good name. So let's do Java bro age in 5 years. Notice here I wrote out 5 in characters rather than using the number 5. As mentioned before, it's just good practice to do that. And let's work out how to figure out what my age would be in 5 years. So simply we can do Java bro age plus 5 to represent how many years we're incrementing it by. Okay, we could have easily done 25 plus 5, but what if this was to change? We'd have to change it in 2 places, right? So it makes sense to reference this variable, since that's what we need, right? We're looking at the Java bro age in 5 years, so we need to use the Java bro age supplied. And it says to print this out, so let's do s out Java bro age in 5 years, just like that, and let's click run. Brilliant, there we go, it's printed out 30. So what we've done now is we've done a challenge that shows that we understand how to create a variable with the type, name, and initial value, as well as some basic expressions that we can do with it. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you gave this challenge a go. If you had any questions at all about this particular video, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you've not, as there's many more videos to come. In the next video, we're going to actually be looking into primitive types. Primitive types is essentially where we've met one, which is a int over here. Notice how it is in orange, which is a keyword in Java. So primitive types are very kind of special things and basic kind of data types in Java, but we'll be going over it in the next video, and we'll be doing a lot more than just kind of printing out an integer. Okay, so hope you're looking forward to that, and see you in the next one.